is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today. I am Sean Murphy, joined by a special guest. He is the co-host of The Pin Down over at Detroit Bad Boys, but also is the producer of the Pistons Pulse podcast with our GOATs, Omari and Bryce. Wes Davenport. Wes, what's going on, man? How are you doing? And thank you so much for being here. Happy All-Star break.
Great. Yeah, happy All-Star break for sure, with the best record in the NBA for the Pistons. Sean, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be on the show to chop it up some Detroit basketball with you. And I got to say that I always love that music coming in. Like, if that doesn't get you in the vibe to talk Pistons hoops these days, I don't know what does. But I didn't know that was Kool-Aid that did that. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Kool-Aid is a man of many talents. I got to give him many thanks for doing that theme song. And the thing I got to give him a lot of credit for is I was like, hey man, how much could I pay you for? He's like, dude, for you, just put a credit. That's all I ask. And it's like, you generous son of a gun. Yeah. And yeah, he killed it. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely love it. And hey, not to toot my horn too much, but I shot that footage and edited the video. So, I mean, I did a little something in there. I contributed a little bit. I'm on the pie chart.
You are. And like, hey, it's Cade Cunningham looking into the camera. Like, that's Pistons basketball these days. So that gets you pumped too.
Yeah. Wes, the last time the Pistons had the best record or best win percentage in the league at All-Star break, were you watching at that point?
Yeah, I was. Not like this.
Yeah. How early into your watching days were you?
Let's see. What year was that again? Was that 05, 06? Yeah. So I would have been, let's just call it 7 going on 8. And I was really starting to fall in love with basketball. But we
were 7 or 8.
So I grew up. Yeah, exactly. And I grew up in the Chicago area. So my dad had a little workaround to get us most of the games, but we weren't, watching all 82 at that point either. So it was most of them, but not all of them. So yeah, I don't like to think about how long that's been. That's
yeah. You ever think of the alternate universe where you were a Kirk Heinrich kid and grew up a huge Chicago Bulls fan?
Hey, don't throw Captain Kirk under the bus like that. He was fun to watch. Those were fun teams with Ben Gordon too. I mean,
hey, I don't mean to start the Kirk Heinrich nerve. That's my bad. You're right.
He was a fun player. No, but yeah, my dad grew up in Michigan. I was always going to be a Detroit sports fan. So there was never the possibility for me. And as time grew on and the Pistons were going in one direction and Derrick Rose shows up and the Bulls start going in the other direction, then my friends start giving me some crap. I really hate the Bulls now, but back then, they were kind of fun.
Well, I mean, even at me as a kid, it's like, dude, Derrick Rose is electrifying as heck. And all you want to see is, in the East at that point is anyone but LeBron, kind of crack through and succeed. And so he was just absolutely phenomenal. And it's like, I think, not to segue too hard, but it's like, I can't think of many teams since that team that have just caught the NBA by attention and just have completely captivated the basketball world and have caught people off guard quite like this Pistons team has. I mean, you and I, we both try to cover it from a more, from a more objective and try to keep a pretty practical approach about how we approach the game. And I think that's one of the reasons why I really enjoy interacting with you and, the stuff that you do. I don't think, at least, not to speak for you, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I certainly wouldn't have believed you if you said, oh yeah, going into this season, after the off season they had, they're going to be at a position where they have less losses than the Thunder and have the best win percentage in the league. I would not have said that. And if you did, I would have been like, oh, so when did Giannis come to Detroit?
Right. Yeah. And then first of all, thank you, Sean. I appreciate that. I have the same exact feelings for you, so I don't want to reciprocate that. But
don't make me blush. But no, I'm kidding.
Well, to the point, I didn't think the Pistons were going to win 50 games this year. They have 40. They have 40 wins at the All-Star break with more than 20 to go. This is so far beyond what I had, quote, reasonably expected out of this group this season that, I mean, I don't even know if I would have said like, oh man, like they must have gotten Giannis or something. I think I just would have straight up not believed you.
Right. Yeah, it would have been like, oh, whose 2K sim is this?
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't, like, it makes sense having watched all the games and see how this group gels. But before the season started, this does not make sense.
Well, I think even for a lot of people outside of Detroit, I think it even doesn't make sense even when they watch it, because I think they see this roster, all they know is the memes that they saw from 2+ years ago now of, people with the garbage bags over their heads and, the 28 game losing streak, the Wingstop memes, like the Pistons were the butt end of the joke. And if you're an outsider looking in, if you're a casual observer, you're like, well, wait a second. They brought in JB Bickerstaff, who, if I'm a casual basketball fan, I've been told is this good, not great coach. And they brought in Tobias Harris, who I'm told as a casual basketball fan is a joke of a player in the situation he was in. And, all these other guys, it's like, well, these guys are all here for the losing. So what's the big difference? And I think that just speaks to, for one, the historic, like the ability to find, like top tier talent along the margins that fit exactly what the Pistons need. But also, I think it just speaks to the high level development that's taken place with the young players that were already there, but then those guys that they are able to identify, like the fact that they got Paul Reed out of the waiver wire. And for all we know, they could get a first round pick for him this summer if they wanted to. And then you have someone like, you have someone like Danis Jenkins, who was an undrafted free agent signed as a two-way and now just signed the largest, conversion deal for a two-way player in the history of the league.
Yeah. And like, I think that there's some narrative too with more of the, I don't want to like call Isaiah Stewart a marginal player, because he's not. He's really core to what this team does. But, like you're bringing up that national perspective. I think coming into the season and even coming into last season, there were, I'll call it 2.5 guys that nationwide everyone really liked. Everyone loved Cade.
Yep.
How could you not? National media was really big on Jalen Duren, all the physical tools, so you get it. And then there's like Asar Thompson's a great defender. We like Asar Thompson as a great defender. And hey, maybe, talking this past offseason, maybe he could take a leap or something. But it's the internal development, like you said, like Isaiah Stewart's working his way to get rid of that narrative that's stuck on him ever since the LeBron thing a few years ago.
Yep.
Right? Isaiah Stewart is one of, if not the best defensive big men in basketball right now.
He might be the most underrated player in basketball right now.
I would say so. The fact that he's not getting more defensive player of the year buzz is just beside. I have no idea how that could be the case. You watch the Pistons, and the Pistons have the second best defense in the NBA all season. And any given night, it's one of two guys. It's either Isaiah Stewart or it's Asar Thompson. Well, so how are both those guys not up for that award?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if you saw the statistics, but this is per Basketball University. The Pistons are number 1 in defensive net rating since January 1st by almost 4 points.
Yeah.
Like they are like it's not just, oh, they started out hot and it was a good story and they've just kind of tapered off since it. It's like, no, they've only gotten better. They've only pressed their foot on the gas harder. And so I think that's why the conversation just gets so much more interesting as we get closer to the postseason. I understand why people look at this team and go, oh, well, they could do something truly special this season, because you have the ingredients. You have Cade, who's a top 5 guy in the league right now with the way that he's playing. You have, like you said, just those defensive demons where if they had that elite level of talent, but on the offensive end of the ball, would be viewed as perennial all-stars. And then you have the perfect coach with the pragmatic front office that allows them to, stay competitive now, but also have a better sense of when to kind of take the jump. And that's why I think for me, when they don't make a move at the deadline, I see a lot of people that are angry, and it's like, I understand why, because you want to, I think one of the things in the NBA, it's like, other than winning a championship, what's the most exciting thing? Making a big trade. Right. And it's like, I get why people want to see the Pistons do that, but I think the attitude of Detroit playing with house money this season is exactly where they should be, what they should be feeling. And as much as people want it to be a championship or bust season, like I think it's still a successful season if they just win a playoff series.
Yeah, and like to that point too, Sean, like it's not just that the Pistons have maintained this kind of, like you said, like maybe a hot streak, right? They've kept it going all year. They're also now really starting to show us they can win in different ways. I know the big storyline coming out of that Hornets game was obviously the big brawl that happens and all the ejections and the fight and whatever, but look what they did to the Hornets, a team that on paper should give their defense a lot of trouble. Right.
Yeah.
They're a heavy 3-point shooting team. I think they shot like 47 threes in that game. They almost shot, I think they shot more threes than they did twos.
And they shot almost double the amount of threes the Pistons did.
Yeah. And earlier in the season, who were the teams that gave them struggles? It was Boston, right? Who did like that same exact thing to Detroit. Now we're seeing that they've got a counter to that.
Yep.
And they've won in different ways. They've gone and scored 130 plus before and won games that way. They've ground down the Knicks and held them to under 80 twice. They're winning in every possible way right now. And so I was right there with you after that deadline. Like, make a little bit of a marginal move. It's kind of a, Jaden Ivey, unfortunately, is kind of a books issue, not so much a on the floor issue, which, it's sad to see that it came to that, but hopefully it's good for Jaden as well. But like this team's not really met a challenge they haven't figured out a way to overcome yet.
Yeah.
So I don't know why you feel like you need to really, really take the swing now. It made sense to me to kind of pull back.
And the teams that in theory they might have the most fits with in the West, there's no guarantee if they were to get the finals, that would be the team they match up with. It's like we all know it's like that Western Conference, like we talk about how, like how much of a unpredictable mess the East is right now. I don't think anyone feels like the Thunder are concrete the favorites at the moment. I don't think if like San Antonio and them matched up, like if it went 7 games, I could see both teams winning that equally right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Even we've seen them be competitive with the Rockets and the Nuggets too in recent months. So I think shout out Jack Kelly. I think he had put up that the Pistons are like 6-2 against the contending teams, right? The teams that are really up at the top of the league right now. And I know they haven't played the Thunder and the Spurs, so like we're gonna find an answer to that really quickly. But the fact that they've beaten Denver twice, that's huge.
Yeah. I think I saw on NBA.com last week, I think it was actually 7-1 against the teams with the top 6 records. Again, that big, that big asterisk of still have to play Oklahoma City, still have to play the Spurs, and they'll play each of them once without Isaiah Stewart, which is a big loss, undeniably. But again, when you have someone like Paul Reed, who can come in as your third center, I tweeted out, I can't think of a third center that's been more important to a team than Paul Reed is. And I think I think like the quality of depth that the Pistons are experiencing right now, I think it stems from, for one, like I said, just the development and being able to identify talent. But on top of that, I think it comes from a real clarity of what's expected of these guys each and every night when they're on the court. I remember so many times, during, like those really rough years where guys would just be looking at each other like, who was supposed to have that guy? Or where, like, who was supposed to be setting the screen? Or who was supposed to be going to the corner and covering the 3-point shot? Like so many moments where guys, like I think a lot of bad teams, it stems from a lack of clarity of what it takes to win and what their role is in the team. And I think one of the things you can say about this Pistons team right now is I think they have as much clarity as any team in the league on what they're looking to accomplish and what's expected of you if you're in the rotation.
Yeah, and I just add to that too, it's not just on the court. I think that there's a clarity of vision with the brain trust for this team as well. Like you're talking about the depth, and it always confuses me when I see that, Troy Weaver kind of getting like credit for, he drafted a bunch of these guys. But the issue was how it all kind of came together. There was this sense that at the time the Pistons wanted to get tough, Detroit style players. And there was never really a real blueprint of what that was. Langdon comes in, JB Bickerstaff comes in, and it's not just, okay, here's exactly what we're looking for out of you on the court, but it's also, hey, in free agency, here's exactly the type of guy that we're looking to bring in. And the draft, we're looking for a Ron Holland. Chaz Lanier, even as being more of a gunner type mentality, like the way he approaches his minutes here in the G League that he's gotten, and I think in like garbage time minutes with Detroit, you can see the through line there. So there's not just a clarity of communication from the coach to the players, from the players to the players. I think there's also just a coherent vision now that everyone has really bought into.
Yep.
And to your point, like that's more than you could ask for. I'm not sure how many other teams you could really say this about right now.
Probably can count on one hand if we're being honest. Even teams like the Warriors, I don't think they could tell you seriously where they're at or what they're doing going forward,
No.
And if we're saying that about a team that's viewed as a dynastic power, I mean, it can literally be true about any team. And I think it shines through like when you listen to Trajan Langdon speak. And it's like, I think like even just like I was in the room when he was doing the post deadline presser. And then also, he had that interview on 97 Won the Ticket. And I think he made a lot of really great points. Like specifically, there's the line where he's like, I'm not thinking about NBA championships when we haven't won a home playoff game yet. He's like, I was in San Antonio in 2014 as an executive when they won. I was an executive in Cleveland in 2016 when they won. I've seen how hard it is to win 16 games in a playoffs. And it's one thing to be able to be great in the regular season. It's another thing to be great in the postseason. And I think it's like, I keep pointing back to people think it's like, oh, we're like the Pacers of last year. And it's like, as great as that team was, like, I think we're more like Oklahoma City, like 2 years ago, where they had Josh Giddey on the roster still. They're kind of at a point where they're still seeking clarity about who they are. And they tested it through the postseason before they went and made whatever quote unquote splash or, all in move. Like, I think it's pretty clear if Trajan is going to go and do something this summer, it's not going to be because of what they did throughout the 82 games of the regular season. It's going to happen because of what happens in the postseason.
Yeah, and I like that comparison a lot. I hadn't thought of that one before, but I mean that was a team that was very successful in the regular season and then fairly successful in the playoffs. But you're right. I mean, they learned that whole SGA Giddey thing is kind of as talented as both guys are. It just didn't mesh in the way that they wanted. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good call. And look to Trajan's point, like I get on the one hand kind of the approach of, well, we haven't done anything yet, so we can't look ahead. So I could see interpreting that as maybe a little bit like a house money. You kind of mentioned the Pistons are playing with house money right now. They're definitely ahead of the curve.
Yep.
I think you could also see it as like just the competitive nature of this team again, kind of coming through now with an executive. Yep. Because the other way to look at that quote is, well, we can't think about this until we do this, right? We can't think about it's almost like maybe the Lions last year aren't the best comparison to make, but what they were talking about, they were talking about win the division first.
Yep.
And then it was to get to the playoffs. So maybe I could see this being something similar. Like, we can't look past that first round. We can't look past winning that first home playoff game, that they are more than on pace to acquiring game one at home. So I could see this as just like pure competitive nature too.
Well, and that would align with their mentality all season long. Like that completely aligns with the way that JB is talked about whenever they're playing tanking teams or whenever they're playing teams that should, in theory, like not match up with them. And outside of the Wizards game, they've done a really good job of keeping their eyes in front of them and just taking care of whoever the opponent is, at any given time. And I think like what you want to see from an executive is, do they have a fighting chance and do they play like they're not afraid of anyone? And look, they check those boxes. So it's like he said, he's like, I'm not coming out and saying the championship word yet because you got to earn that right, but they can certainly do some damage. And I think he's right to feel that way. And especially with, the chemistry and the camaraderie and the, like the clear culture that locker room has. And I know people hear that and they think it's a cliche, but in the basketball world, when you have like that like almost like euphoric, almost like nirvana, like peace within a basketball team, you cling on to that for dear life and you make moves very carefully because you don't want to mess that up.
Yeah, it's five guys that have to move as a unit on the floor, right? And there's no huddle before the play starts where everyone can figure out exactly where they need to go. This is live. You have to be communicating, and I think that exactly like you said there. I look at something like how good this defense is, right, for this team,
Yep.
and it's the chemistry, it's the communication. You have two really great leaders in Isaiah Stewart and Cade Cunningham. Jalen Duren is improving as a communicator, as a defender as well. And I think so is Asar Thompson. And then you just have this culture of competitiveness. There was that great piece by Fred Katz looking at just what the Pistons did in early January. When they're kind of in a down spell, what do? They go play other sports against one another. Like they love beating up on each other.
Yep.
And then that gives you not only just the camaraderie, but also the chemistry, the comfort. We've seen it a few times, getting up in someone's face when they're not living up to the standard that we're all trying to set. That's productive. That's not a negative. You need to be able to do that. And it needs to be coming from a leader, which it always is. So that's great. You don't get that if you don't first have the bond and chemistry in the locker room in the first place, right? So, this defense isn't just good because they try really hard. They do, and they're really competitive, but they're so good because they're on a string. And when you got five guys moving like that, it's tough to score.
Yeah. When each and every guy is so sound in their fundamentals and are just about never lacking in the energy and the prerequisite, drive to give a shit that you just, quite frankly, you can't teach it. It's like even guys like Duncan Robinson, who at times could be the guy who's kind of targeted defensively. It's like he's almost never in the wrong position. He's almost never, like not trying. His length makes it harder for a lot of guys than they expect. Again, I'm not coming on and saying he's a star on the defensive end, but it's like even guys like him, he's made good plays. And even guys like Karras, like when you stepped in, it's like, yeah, the scoring definitely has not been there this year. And I'm not coming here to say that Karras has had an awesome season, but it's like, you know what? Even he's had moments where he's made some really big, crucial plays on the defensive side of the ball. And that's a testament to the culture.
Yeah. And I think you could see it too. Like when Duncan Robinson gets that block and then run out dunk, just look at the bench. Yeah. Oh, they love it. Right.
Oh,
they love it when their shooter goes out there and makes a defensive play. That's what gets all of those guys going. Not when Duncan makes the three. I mean, they're pumped when he makes the three, but they expect that. When he rises up and he makes a damn good play like that, they're all losing it. Right.
Yeah. Even when Kevin Huerter made his first three in a Pistons uniform, they were all just up on their feet. Like Greg Kelser said, it's like they just made a game winning shot.
Yeah.
And it's like they were already up by 20 plus at that point.
I have really enjoyed after the deadline the couple of blowout losses when you get to see Kevin Huerter in the garbage time minutes and you're like, man, he's really struggled early, right, when he's getting regular minutes, but at the same time, that dude's too good for garbage time minutes.
Yeah,
all of a sudden it just looks so easy for him.
Yeah, I mean, JB made a good point because I asked him about it after the Knicks game, and he pretty much said, people got to remember at that point, he didn't have a practice yet. I think he's probably had one practice at this point. And so I would imagine that like, he's probably, he'll probably rest a little bit during the break, I'm sure. But, you got to think he's probably going to be in the gym quite a bit and, getting time to be acclimated. And those practices post All-Star are going to be huge. And the thing that's nice is like you said, clearly he's too good to be playing just in garbage time. I think naturally over time, his role will expand, but you can do it organically as he's playing better and feeling more comfortable. You don't have to rush him in because you have something that's working and going well. And he's a guy where it's like, I've talked about this before too. It's like, look, the shooting this season hasn't been great. And I'm not saying he's a, perfect player. In fact, I think if like a year or two ago, you would have said, hey, we're going to be trading Jaden Ivey for Kevin Huerter, would have been like, oof, what happened? But, I think in reality, it's like Kevin Huerter, I think has a better chance of fixing whatever's ailing him in Detroit than Jaden Ivey did staying in Detroit. So, based on the way they play, again, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but with his skill set, you would think with the playmaking in Detroit, the bigs that they have to be able to set high quality screens, there's at least an infrastructure here where it's like, well, if it can't work here, is it going to work anywhere at this point?
Yeah. And I do think, Kevin Huerter does one thing that Jaden Ivey in really 3 years has just not shown that he's capable of doing, and that's shooting off movement. And I know that, Kevin Huerter, the shot's not been good this year. Like you said, it's been precipitously falling since he left Atlanta after that first season in Sacramento. It's like, I've never seen anything like that before. I have no idea what the story is behind it. It doesn't make sense to me because he's also played with good playmakers at every stop he's been in. So it's not just like he's not getting the good looks, that could have been part of it this season because Josh Giddey's been in and out of the lineup. But he also was with De'Aaron Fox, and I think Tyrese Halliburton had some overlap there too. It's that's not the full story.
Hey, it was a Kobe White, I would assume. He was the guys who knew how to handle the ball and get it to their open guys.
Exactly. But like at the same time, in theory, if he could get his shot back, he brings that movement element that just Jaden Ivey, with the way that he shoots the basketball, being a little bit more of a set shot with a wider base, he just never could do, never showed that he could do, I should say. So I get the swing on that, because if you figure, there's just not really a fit here with Jaden Ivey moving forward in the future. Kyle Metz brought up on the pin down with us when he came on right before the trade deadline that like Jaden Ivey's cap hold is almost $30 million this offseason now for Chicago. And that's not just a little blip. That's a lot of money that he can basically hold hostage if you give him that QO. That's just a bad spot to be in. So if you figure that you're moving on from him anyway, taking a swing on a guy like Kevin Huerter that at least could maybe bring a little bit of that Tim Hardaway Jr. back if you could figure out that jump shot, that's something this team does need. They don't have it when Duncan Robinson sits down. So I get it. It makes sense.
And then otherwise, like you said, ultimately it's a financial move, and then they get the flexibility in the off season. And hey, if it works out great, maybe they can bring him back on a team friendly deal. Otherwise, you can wash your hands and, get ready for supper. But anyway, it's interesting post deadline because I, kind of going through and looking at all the different trades of all the different transactions we saw, only one team over 500 traded a first round pick at the deadline. Every other first round pick that was traded by a basement dweller, which is absolutely backwards to how you would consider, like how things have gone historically in the past. But if anything, we've seen that the trade deadlines essentially become what a lot of people have called pre-agency, where teams are acquiring guys to, really go out and like contribute the next year. It's kind of the Brandon Ingram to Toronto thing, but now that's kind of just becoming the latest fad. Washington's really taking it to another level of what they're doing. But it's interesting because, again, like there's that, but then there is still like two all-stars that were traded for each other, and Darius Garland and James Harden. So now in theory, Cleveland looks to be more intriguing and more threatening. And apparently ever since James Harden's been on the floor for Cleveland, there has not been a single minute where the primary ball handler wasn't Donovan Mitchell or James Harden. Undeniably, like offensively, that is a real weapon and asset to have. At the same time, we've seen overwhelming results that James Harden's not a good playoff performer, and we haven't seen a whole lot of success outside of the bubble for Donovan in that light either. So are they the team that like we're viewing right now as the biggest threat to the Pistons? Is it the team that they've beaten by a combined 61 points the two times they've played them? Is it the team in Boston where Jason Tatum might be back, but even then, what percentage of Jason Tatum's going to be back?
Yeah. I think it's still the Knicks. I
Right.
don't know if that's going to be a popular one, but the Knicks are undeniably talented. If you want to talk about how the talent's meshing, that's a very different conversation.
Yeah.
But in terms of just the pieces that they have and the ability to punish Detroit with the pieces they have, I think that they're really interesting from that perspective. I mean, you just go back to, it's basically the same matchup as it was last year, right? So you kind of go back and look at what we as Pistons fans were worried about with the Knicks, and it was, all right, well, who's going to guard Cat? Because you don't want Duran to take that matchup too often. And Tobias Harris did admirably, but is he going to do really well a second time? OG Anunoby in a playoff setting is going to give Cade Cunningham some trouble, right?
Yep.
Like they are well set up to give the Pistons a little bit of issue. I do think adding Isaiah Stewart last year probably has an impact. I don't know. I don't want to say that they would have won that series. I'm a little
At least would have
skeptical
gone
of
to
that,
game
but
7.
yeah, I think it would have gone to a game 7. So, like that's a difference, right? And the Pistons are better now than they were last year. So I'd still worry more about the Knicks. The thing with Harden is my concern with the Cavs adding him isn't necessarily a concern that the Pistons specifically can take advantage of, but there are a lot of other teams in the East that can. So James Harden's he's not a good defender. And his saving grace on that end is that he's a big body that you cannot post up. So if you get James Harden on a switch and he switches onto a big, that's actually an okay matchup for James Harden. He
Yep.
is awful chasing perimeter players. And the Cavs are not a switch team. That gives me some pause. If I'm a fan of Cleveland, I would be very nervous about that. I know the early returns have been good, but it's 3 games and Harden's played like 32 minutes a night. He's shooting really well from the free throw line and from 3, but he's actually otherwise very comparable to what they've been getting from Darius Garland. And Darius Garland, for all of his warts, at least can run.
Yeah.
And with perimeter players. So like I'm looking at the Cavs, like I think if they get to a matchup with Detroit, that's a tough one. They're super talented as well, and they're big. So do the Pistons go double big to kind of counter that? Do they run with Harris taking Mobley maybe because you could body him up? I don't know.
Yep.
There's some fun stuff. I think that'll be a fun series.
Yeah.
I wonder if they get to Detroit, like depending on how the bracket sets up, the Hornets could give them issues.
Well, and not to mention,
like Boston could.
Not to mention, I think right now, if like the 4th, I think they're a 5th seed right now. I think if the playoffs were to start today, it would be as of today, it would be a Toronto Cleveland matchup round 1, which I'd take Cleveland in that.
Oh,
but
sure.
There's a very real possibility they might face the 76ers round 1, which I mean, like the Sixers certainly have, like they have their own question marks too, but like the emotional element of that series of James Harden having to go back to Philly, one of the teams he quit on, like undeniably from a basketball fan perspective, that would be cinema. That's for sure.
Would.
Yeah,
it would. And what do the Cavs guards do with Maxey and VJ? Like it's, I really think that really perimeter oriented teams that shoot a ton of threes are just going to give the Cavs issues.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they've played any team that's really all in on that archetype over these first 3 games since the deadline. So I think that's going to be like the appointment. That's the lesson I want to learn. Like I want to see the Cavs go up against Boston and go up against Charlotte, and let's see what happens there. Because I would be worried if I were a Cavs fan.
Yeah,
as excited as I'd also be, I would be concerned.
So thus far in James Harden's first games with the Cavs, they played at the Kings, who have the worst record in the league. They played at Denver, which I mean, hey, that's a legit win. Good stuff. Yeah. But then they played versus the Wizards, who second worst record in the NBA. However, Wizards beat the Pistons.
Will Riley is actually the best player in the NBA right now. I didn't know if you knew that, but Will Riley, superstar.
That's true. That's a very good point. Him or Kawhi Leonard.
But, and Bilal Coulibaly wants a word. So the Wizards they're doing some good stuff out there in Washington D.C.
Yeah, Philly, by the way, is like they're a team that like come postseason, it's like I don't think I would view them as a legitimate threat, but I wouldn't want to face them either. Just in the standpoint of like Embiid's health, again, is like the number one thing you cannot count on in the NBA. But Tyrese Maxey's drive and ability to get a bucket is starting to become one of the most reliable things in basketball.
Legit,
and then you have a guy like VJ who's as good as he is as a rookie, and he's only getting started. It's like Cooper Flagg's been incredible, but I don't even know if it's a consensus that he's going to be the best player out of this class. When you have guys like Con Kneppel being as incredible as he is, VJ Edgecombe, he could be Dwayne Wade 2.0. It's like this class is unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. And I think the East is just filled with teams like that too. Like you look up and down the playoff picture and the play-in. Like I almost think that if you're a mid-pack team, it's harder to be in the Eastern Conference right now than in the West. Because the East is deep, and there are
West
a lot of teams
very top heavy.
Yeah, they are, and there are a lot of teams in the East where, like, I'm looking at them, and hey, like Charlotte's going to be a tough out for any team that gets them in a playoff series.
Yeah,
they are. They just are.
Just before you overlook
might
the Hawks,
even be kind of a little weird too with how small that they're playing right now. I don't know if they're going to stick that long, but like, there's talent there. It's interesting.
Just before you overlook the Atlanta Hawks this year,
right?
Just remember they have New Orleans unprotected pick going into the lottery this year. So what if they add AJ DeBanza to what they have going on there? Instantly, that's an interesting team in the East.
And even this year with the Hawks, like you're looking, they got Dyson Daniels, one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. Onyeka Okongwu's an underrated center, I think. And they've got a triple-double machine that they're running everything through. And Johnson out there, like they are talented. That's a fun team. If they make it in as a play-in team or even higher, like they're going to give someone some issues.
And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, probably on the Mount Rushmore of most underrated players in the league right now. Like he's been a stellar addition for them this year. So I don't think the East is a lock by any consideration, but as we've laid out, it's like even all these teams that are awesome, it's like they have real fundamental flaws. Like the second the Knicks face adversity, I don't know if they're close enough to get over that. Boston, it's like you're essentially relying on Jason Tatum to give you like 2 or 3 awesome months to win a title. That's hard to ask for anyone. And then like even Detroit, it's like, the shooting's a real issue, but it's like, at least with them, if there's anything that you can count on, like a lot of these live or die by the 3 teams, you can execute your offense perfectly and still just have an awful shooting night. Whereas like, if you are bringing the right level of intensity and focusing on the defensive side of the ball, you can thrive in just about any element. That's at least to me, like the most controllable style of basketball that you can play, where there's a little less variance in the unpredictability component.
Yeah, and there's one more so with playoff stuff, right? Defense travels. That's long been the adage, right? But you know what else travels is points in the paint. If you're a really paint focused offense that is consistent, that is bankable, especially in a playoff setting where things slow down and defenses get a little bit more firm. So if you can continue to generate those rim looks, all looks are going to be difficult. You're not going to be getting a lot of easy threes either. So the closer ones, as long, assuming that it's not just like filled with floaters from, right at the free throw line, Pistons are very good at getting right to the front of the rim, drawing fouls or finishing. They're one of the top free throw shooting teams by volume in the league so far this season. So I think that travels really well too. I'm very worried about the shooting issue. I'm very worried about, if Cade's having an off night, is Jalen Duren the type of player that can take the ball and go get his? I want to see it. Like we've seen it before, but he's going to have to do it.
Man, he's going to be throwing some weird stuff.
He is, and he's going to have to make lemons out of that, or make lemonade out of those lemons, right? When he gets the ball in those situations, I think he can. Like he's proven that he's talented enough. It's just you got to see it in the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. Like if the Pistons are going to make a run, he's got to be that legit second option, second star. And so there are plenty of questions with Detroit, but I think that maybe we get lost a little bit in some of those because they do those 3 things that all really good playoff teams do. They shut you down, so they're a great defensive team. They get to the rim, and score, and they get to the free throw line.
Yep.
And that's all bankable stuff.
Without a doubt. And kind of before we move on to the next topic, just to kind of put a wrap on kind of this topic, like I was talking with some scouts after the deadline at the game before the Knicks game. And I just mentioned with Cleveland, just from my perspective, it feels like they have over the last couple of years, because remember, JB was there. He had a very similar culture to what he's built in Detroit of like, they called them like junkyard dogs, like played really hard on the defensive side of the ball. And then 2 years later, they have James Harden, Kenny Atkinson, reportedly is like a very like laid back, kind of like, like a collaborative coach more than a dictative coach, I should say. And I don't think I've seen a team do more of a complete 180 on their identity over the course of the last 2 years than I've seen from Cleveland. And at first, I think when they still had a lot of that defensive infrastructure, they were playing really well. As it's kind of gone away, I question their toughness going into the postseason. So it'll just be interesting to monitor, to say the least.
I liked this Cavs team last year. I liked them coming into this season. When things are going well, they are a really fun team to watch. Yep. Donovan Mitchell is if he's hot, that's appointment viewing NBA TV. I'm a huge fan of Evan Mobley and Jarrett Allen. Like they've got some really great pieces. What's been going on this season in Cleveland, I cannot explain. I have no idea. It doesn't make any sense to me how a team that is anchoring with two of the best big men defenders in basketball, one of which is lanky, can move a little bit, is somewhat switchable. Like, how is that not an infrastructure where you can just funnel everything to those two guys and have at least a very good defense?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
Yeah.
I don't.
They are far too good, or like talent wise, they have far too much to be 13th in the league defensively right now. They should not be mid on that side of the court.
No, they should be up near Detroit.
Yeah.
They really should.
Yep. Exactly. But
so I think it's fair.
Yeah.
What you said, I think that's fair.
Yeah, but they're not, and that's the problem.
Yeah.
A guy where, again, you just talk about the unpredictability. I referred to this guy a minute ago, Kawhi Leonard. Listen, I'm a big Pablo guy, so I mean, obviously, there's the whole aspiration and like whatever happens angle with that. But then there's also like it's even still fascinating if you pushed all that stuff to the side, because it's like, well, wait, they waited all these years for Kawhi to be as awesome as he is right now. And that's when they trade Harden. That's when they trade Zubac. That's when they start to move the pieces. And so it makes, then you hear, okay, well, teams started making calls about Kawhi before the deadline, seeing if he was available, and nothing happened, but sounds like it could be revisited in the summer. And so it's like, I'm just curious from your perspective. It's like, but we see Kawhi be on the move, and let's say we get a guarantee that Uncle Dennis is out of the picture and things are all clean, on top and under the table. Let's say Detroit doesn't pan out this year. Is that someone, if you could buy low, that you'd have some interest in?
The framing of the question makes it a yes, because if you could buy low on Kawhi Leonard, in my book, surefire Hall of Famer, one of the best players of our generation here. Like, yeah, you do it, but I just don't think that you're going to get the opportunity to buy low. Like, Kawhi is going to take a lot to get. And I like, that's one of those, to me, like, you think back to when Brooklyn was doing all of their machinations to get Kevin Durant and James Harden and Kyrie Irving all in Brooklyn that first go around.
Yep.
The Cavs just like showed up as a third team and they got Jarrett Allen. Like, if there's some big Kawhi stuff going on with his contract, it's probably going to take multiple teams to make it happen. Yep. Like, I would love to hop in and steal someone from the Clippers. Like, what if you could get kind of Chris Dunn as a throw-in? Or, you talked about maybe you're moving on from Paul Reed. right? Because some team's going to really see all the performance that he's done and say, hey, we want that guy to like get him solid minutes because he's stuck in Detroit. There's no real way. Well, maybe you could get like Niederhauser, who's a solid big. He's young, he's under team control, right? And he's huge, which gives the Pistons the size element. Like I would be more interested in that sort of deal. Like even an Isaiah Jackson. Like I'd be interested in something like that.
Yeah.
Not the price it would take to get Kawhi Leonard into Detroit with all of the injury history. And like Kawhi's one of my favorite players of all time. So like this is I'm not dissing on him. I would love him in a Pistons uniform. I'm just afraid it's going to be like Duran and Asar and first round picks. And they're going to ask about Ron Holland. And then at this point, you've not even really hit the cap number. So like, it's also how is Duncan Robinson? Like, it's
the epitome of high risk, high reward, pushing your chips in the middle of the table and saying, we do it live, like it is definitely, it goes against a lot of how the Pistons have operated, but undeniably just when Kawhi's at his best, his style of basketball would be a phenomenal fit.
Especially with Cade.
Right.
Too.
Right. But like you said, this is the guy in Kawhi Leonard who called Wingstop when he lost his coupons. Right? Like this is one of the most frugal, like I am taking my every penny I can get guys in the league, which by the way, hey, you know what? I'm not blaming him. Respect. I completely get it. But at the same time, if we're talking about, okay, want to keep this culture up, don't want to, risk that. It's like as much as you would look at the basketball court and go, okay, this would certainly be an intriguing fit. And you go, okay, well, at the very least, Detroit's a franchise that has some history and things like that. But Kawhi has played in warm places his entire career. And the one time he played somewhere cold, he left the millisecond he could. So even
after
when he won a
championship.
Yeah. So again, as much as like you would go, man, adding Kawhi Leonard is like, it is certainly a Pandora's box that is tantalizing to open. It's one of those situations where the grass might not be greener, even if that would undeniably be a really fun lineup to play it with in 2K.
Yeah, it would. And like the only way I'll stamp my approval on this now, because there's no way that this happens. The only way I could ever see Kawhi Leonard in Detroit is if Kawhi Leonard goes to the Clippers brass and says, I will only play for the Detroit Pistons.
Yeah.
Because they're very close. I want to win a championship.
Yep.
I will put out there right now that if any other team trades for me, I will not show up at training camp. I will do absolutely nothing for anybody other than Detroit. And now maybe you could get him at like kind of a discount. Right. And that's never going to happen.
Let's be real. He's going where he's getting paid. And that's what a lot of these guys that are in their upper to mid 30s are doing nowadays. It's like, oh, well, you know what? I'm going to go to the place that's going to give me the contract. And clearly Kawhi's made the decisions that have been best for business up to this point. And so I think it's probably, probably realistic to expect more of the same. To me, though, I will say, call me crazy if you want to. If I was Trajan and I was offered either Giannis or Kawhi, based on current issues and things going on, you might disagree with me here. I'd look at Kawhi a little more seriously. I'd look at Giannis because you probably wouldn't have to give up as much. But that's just me. Call me crazy. That's just me.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
again,
that's fair.
I don't see
that's
either
closer
happening.
than I would have thought.
Yeah, I don't see either happening, to be honest. But
no,
if both are presented on the table for me, I'd pick Kawhi more often than you'd think. That's all I'm saying. How about that? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
More of a debate than it's been in a long time, which credit to Kawhi. But before we let you go, though, do want to tell people about the stuff that you're doing and where people can follow you and the work that you have going on. So, Wes, want to roll out the red carpet, my friend? Where can people find you?
I appreciate that, Sean. So you can follow me on Twitter at TheRealWestD3. I and Blake, myself and Blake, we run the Pin Down over at Detroit Bad Boys. So that's a weekly mailbag podcast show. We record it live, so you can get your comments in. And if you ask us a question, we'll pull that up. So we also have a really fun like voicemail line, which has kind of slowly become our favorite little thing. So we can actually hear your guys' voice. If you leave us a voicemail, we'll play your question on the show, which is always super fun. And then I also produce the Pistons Pulse with, as you already mentioned, the GOATs, right? Bryce Simon, Motor City Hoops, and Omari Sanko for the second from the Detroit Free Press. So if you're not following those guys, make sure that you are. It's a great podcast. They do an awesome job. And Bryce also has that Motor City Hoops Substack, which is free, and I use it all the time. So I think you guys ought to as well. I think I did everything. I think that was it. I think I'm done.
Well, Wes, seriously, man, thank you so much for being here and for taking the time. Definitely appreciate you coming on the pod, and we're definitely gonna have to run this back again. Would be a lot of fun to have you back on closer towards playoff time. So,
thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and we're gonna have to get you over. I'll have to drag you over to that mailbag show.
Hey, absolutely, man.
Hey, look out for that.
Hey, just let me know, man. Just let me know. But thank you to those who tuned in as well. Be sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Peace out.